And welcome to April's meeting of the Business and Culture Committee. I'm going to ask the Director to take us through item 1, which is the notice and summons of meeting, and item 2, which is member attendance and apologies. Stephen.
Thank you, Chair. So members, you're hereby summoned to attend the monthly meeting of Business and Culture, to be held a hybrid meeting conducted remotely via WebEx and physically in the Council Chamber in Strabane. We could take the roll call, please. Alderman Cook. Alderman Guy.
Online, Stephen.
Councillor John Boyle. Councillor Alex Duffy.
Online.
Councillor Farrell. Councillor Harkin. Councillor Hart.
Anshaw.
Councillor Heaney.
Anshaw.
Councillor Hutton.
Anshaw.
Councillor McDade. Councillor Mooney. Councillor Farrell.
Anshaw.
Councillor Neelis.
Carolina.
Thank you, members.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. Item 3 is the broadcasting statement. I would like to remind everyone present at this meeting in the chamber or in attendance remotely that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. This broadcast may be terminated or suspended in accordance with our protocol. Due to your attendance at this meeting, you're consenting to being filmed and to the use and storage of those images for broadcasting or training purposes and for the purpose of keeping historical records and making those records available to the public. Members and approved speakers are reminded to only have their mics and cameras on while speaking at the meeting and to use the chat facility to highlight a request to speak. A copy of the Council privacy notice may be found on the Council website, derrystrabane.com. Item 4 is declaration of members' interest. So if you want to declare them now or at the relevant item, that would be great. None so far. Right, item 5 is our delegation. So we're honoured to have Kieran Donoghue and Alison Curry here from Invest NI. You're really welcome. And they're going to give us an update on the performance of Invest NI, progress against the Lions Review and the sub-regional strategy. So folks, we have your presentation, talk through it, then we're going to open up the floor for sort of questions and commentary. Normally we say 10 minutes, but I'm not going to stick to that at all. This is really, really important. So take as long as you wish. Okay, so thank you very much.
Chair, members of the Council, thank you so much for the kind invitation to join you this afternoon. Alison and I are very pleased to be here, and I want to put on record our thanks for the support that we have received from the Council over many years now in terms of our work to promote Northern Ireland for investment and to support local businesses. As the Chair said, there's kind of 4 key topics we'd like to cover in our presentation today. One is to update you on Invest NI's current strategy. We're just started in April this month, the 3rd year of our 3-year strategy. And I'll give you a sense of how we've performed both across Northern Ireland, but in your district area in that context. So we'll talk about performance. We'll talk about our new approach to regional development. And we'll also give you an update in relation to what we've been doing on the Lions Review. So as the Chair said, you've already had the deck in advance, so I take it you've had an opportunity to read and reflect. I don't propose to dwell on every single slide, more make a series of observations, brief observations on them as part of an overall narrative for you in relation to what the organisation is doing and what we've achieved. The slide in front of you at the moment is the slide that summarises our current strategy. It's a 3-year strategy. It ends in 2027. It's entitled Our Future in Focus, and it has 6 key goals. Boost business investment. That means help our existing 3,000 clients across Northern Ireland to reinvest. encourage more entrepreneurs and founders to establish businesses for the first time and then help them to scale that business, and then win more inward investment, foreign direct investment for Northern Ireland and the various regions of Northern Ireland. And as part of that boosting business investment focus, we will also have to accelerate innovation and skills. So working with stakeholders right across Northern Ireland, the universities and the Department for the Economy, to make sure that we're supporting innovation within our client base and helping create a pipeline of skills that are there to meet the needs of our clients. Driving global ambition is very important. As you'll appreciate, the domestic economy here at home in Northern Ireland is relatively small. So in order for our clients to scale, to grow and become really profitable, they're going to have to serve international markets. And we have a network of offices around the world and a team helping our companies to establish a presence in those overseas markets. And then equally, we're engaging with corporates in Europe, the United States, and Asia, and presenting them with a proposition to get them to come and visit Northern Ireland and hopefully take a decision to invest here. You'll be aware that one of the priorities of the current Minister for the Economy is to develop the economy in a sustainable manner. So we are alert to try and develop the economy without adding to the economy's carbon footprint. You know, there's been more than £1 billion allocated to City and Growth Deal initiatives, so that's part of our strategy. And this council area has a number of those City and Growth Deal investments. And what we're doing is incorporating the infrastructure and those City and Growth Deal projects into our proposition for investment. And then finally, promoting places and partnerships. We are aware as an organisation that we have been subject to historical criticism suggesting that we are only or principally interested in developing Belfast. And we wanted to make a point in this strategy that that's not true. Belfast is very, very important, and we have a lot of clients there. And we remain committed to developing the Belfast metropolitan area and supporting our clients there, but not at the expense of supporting clients elsewhere across Northern Ireland. So we're trying to reframe and reconfigure how we approach the overall issue of regional development. And we realize that as an organisation, we by ourselves can't completely reverse historical and geographic inequalities across Northern Ireland, but the only way to address them over the long term is in partnership with other key stakeholders, yourself and the council, the universities, businesses, and other stakeholders. Moving on to the next slide, and again, won't dwell on them. This strategy is very much target driven. So what you have in this slide is the targets that have been cascaded through the organization. So every executive in InvestNI understands what they have to do in the context of the strategy. So I won't dwell on each of the hexagons, but at a headline level, we set a target to win a minimum. And these are minimum targets. They're not maximum, they're minimum, of 5,000 productive investments by the end of the 3-year strategy. We've set a target to increase expenditure on research and development and innovation by our clients to £750 million. And underneath each of those targets, you'll see what they represent in terms of a percentage uplift on the previous strategy of the organisation and the previous business plan. So if we deliver £750 million of expenditure on R&D and innovation by the end of the 3rd year of the strategy, that will be 21% higher than the organisation has ever delivered in terms of expenditure in that area. I'm pleased to report that while we haven't published our 2nd year results yet and won't publish them until June, the initial indications are that performance in the 2nd year has built upon excellent performance in the 1st year. So right now we're north of 4,000 investments against the full 3-year target of 5,000. And there's equally impressive performance in relation to the other areas. The next slide just showed you some of the supporting metrics. So as you drill down to the targets, there are certain sub-measures that are allocated to individual teams within the organization. There's a lot of detail there that I won't dwell on. but you have it for information. The next slide, thank you so much, is to give you a sense. So against those targets, this is what we delivered in the first year of the new strategy 2024-2025. So you can see there, against the target of 5,000 investments, we delivered 2,062 investments in 2024-2025. We delivered total investment value of north of £600 million into the Northern Ireland economy. We won a total of 19 new inward investments. So that means international companies headquartered overseas that never had a presence in Northern Ireland. There was 19 of those new investments in just the first year of the strategy, and we're on track to repeat that performance this year. One of the criticisms of the organization that was drawn to my attention when I joined over 2 years ago now was that you're only interested in large firms and only interested in large foreign-owned firms. So being new to the organization, I asked the team, show me the data that verifies that perception of Invest in I, and it turned out not to be true. The organization has always delivered the bulk of its support to locally owned small and medium-sized enterprises. The large foreign-owned firms tend to attract a lot of attention in the media when they make an investment, because oftentimes broadcasters and the media view their investments as very newsworthy, so they will comment on them. But what is hidden almost below the waterline, if this was an iceberg, is the fact that 92% of our support and the bulk of our engagement is with locally owned small and medium-sized enterprises. Another key target that we set for this strategy, consistent with our increased emphasis on regional balance and regional development, was we set a target of winning a minimum of 60% of all of our investments outside the Belfast metropolitan area. And in the first year of the strategy, we came close to that target. We didn't reach it. The target was 60%, and we came in at 59%. But that's still indicative of a significant uplift in the total number of investments that we won and supported outside the Belfast metropolitan area and across your council districts and others. And in the first year of the strategy, then in the top right-hand corner, you'll see it there. We won a total of £245 million, almost £250 million in investment in R&D and innovation by our clients. So in terms of that being a summary of the first year of the strategy, as an organization, we were pleased. We didn't meet all of our targets, but we met the bulk of them. And we viewed this as like building a house. This is the foundation that we're putting in the first year of the strategy, and we will build on that in years 2 and 3. And as I said, based upon the preliminary results that I've seen to the end of March, our year end is 31st of March. It's very, very encouraging for the second year. Next slide, please. I won't stay long on this. This slide just summarizes again one of our strategic priorities, promoting places and partnerships. So our job isn't just about promoting Belfast, it's about promoting Strabane, about promoting Derry, Londonderry, and as many locations as possible right across Northern Ireland, and doing that in partnership with local stakeholders who know the lie of the land, know the business people, have the network of relationships, people who we can put in a room to convince a foreign investor to come and invest here. Because when local people are in the room with us talking about their local area, investors can see their knowledge of their local area, but also sense and observe their passion for their community and for place. So we have undertaken a series of initiatives associated with this strategic priority. We are in the process of increasing the size of our regional team. So traditionally, people would have said, well, Invest in I, you're very Belfast-centric. The bulk of your people are employed in headquarters in Belfast. So we recognized that criticism. And we're in the process of increasing the people that work in our regional office network by 40%. Traditionally, we've operated a 4 operating region model across Northern Ireland. We switched that to 5. So there's 5 teams now working out of our regional office network with targets related to that region and dedicated to winning and supporting investment in that region. The other point that I made to the Minister, if we were to have any ability to win more investment for the other parts of Northern Ireland, the various regions, was that we need more land and property. So as an organisation, we hadn't invested in acquiring new property for many, many years. Part of it was related to budgetary constraints, but we're running out of land. So the Minister signed off on a new land and property programme so we could acquire more land right across various council areas and create next generation business parks. Because when we bring, for example, an international investor into Northern Ireland, we want to be able to take them to a place where they could build a factory or establish a business premises, a turnkey solution. Now that will take time. It won't be achieved within the life of the current strategy, because I'm sure all of you are aware of how challenging land transactions can be. They're complex legally, the conveyancing process, etc. And it's also expensive acquiring land and building buildings. But there is a commitment at a ministerial level, at a policy level, to helping us to acquire and develop more land. Again, won't dwell on this slide. It's just a graphic that kind of summarizes the various components of our increased emphasis on regional development. And the intention is to deliver more regional impact right across Northern Ireland. We want the people to be able to find job opportunities near where they live, close to their community. We want to give them a choice. So if they decide to go and work in Belfast, that's a choice that they've exercised. But we want to give them the choice of working near home or going to Belfast, or indeed developing their career overseas before returning to Northern Ireland. It's about getting our existing installed base of clients reinvesting to create those opportunities for people to work. Next slide then, and again, I've alluded to this in some of my earlier remarks. This graphic shows you the 5 region operating model that we have. So Belfast is stripped out as a separate region, but we have an eastern region, southern, western, and north and northwest region. There was also criticism of the organization that not a lot of the senior management of the organization, so the key executives shaping the strategy and direction of the organization, were based in our regional office. So that led to a perception that Invest&I is very top heavy. If you're not based in Belfast, and you're not part of the senior management team based in Belfast, you're not going to get a look in. You're not going to shape the strategy and the thought process of the organization. So we've appointed new heads of regional business at grade 6, which is part of our senior management team. And each of them are working out of the regional office, leading the teams and feeding intelligence about opportunities and challenges in council areas directly to me and to Alison as Chief Development Officer. So Alison's appointment of Chief Development Officer is a really significant strategic initiative in the organisation, because we've never had a Chief Development Officer. And Alison is effectively responsible for the regional development agenda of the organisation. Alison sits on the executive committee of the organisation, is a direct report to me. So if I need to know what's happening in any part of Northern Ireland, whether it's a challenge for our business or an opportunity, I pick up the phone to Alison, who in turn can get local intelligence from these heads of regional business. We've just appointed a new head of regional business for the North and Northwest region. Many of you may know her. I think she's a former council employee, Aideen MacArthur. Delighted to welcome Aideen on board. So she will be an advocate for this region at the top table in Invest&I, if I could characterize it that way. Many of you will know Des Gartland. Aideen's appointment shouldn't be interpreted in any way as criticism of Des Gartland. It was a competition. Sometimes these jobs go your way, sometimes they don't. Des is a good man. He has done great work in this region for many, many years, and he will be a vital asset to me, to Alison, to Aideen and the team in taking our agenda forward in the region. Next graphic then. Chair, are you okay? You want me to speed up, slow down, go faster? The next slide is our regional targets. This is just to make the point now that the operating teams within Invest in I, they're given targets by the executive committee every year. These are the number of investments you must win, the value of those investments, the job creation in those investments, the amount of R&D and innovation, export contracts, etc. They're cascaded down to the organization, right down to the level of individual regions. So there's regional teams who get a portion of the overall organization targets and can see their contribution to the overall achievement of Invest in I in an operating year. The next slide, thank you so much. Next slide just gives you a profile of our current client base in the Northwest. So you can see there we've just shy of 200 clients, and you can see there the number of people they employ, 12,000 people. Sales is close to £2.5 billion, and they're investing just under £50 million. The font here is quite small, £50 million, £45 million in R&D. Our job is to increase those numbers. So as far as I'm concerned, 192 clients isn't enough. So we are actively looking to help support the establishment of new businesses who will pass into Invest in I and become clients and improve this performance. We have people as we speak in overseas markets talking to foreign multinationals about here's a reason to come to Northern Ireland and here's a reason to come to the Northwest region within Northern Ireland, showcasing the capabilities of the region. So in a way, our job is simple. These are the set of numbers we have. We want to grow them in the right direction and qualitatively as well. The next slide specifically carves out the Derry City and Strabane numbers from that overall regional client base. And as you can see there, just shy of 100 clients, 7,500 people employed, sales of just over £1 billion, an R&D of £34 million, and exports of just over £500 million. Our job again in this council area is drive those numbers up. We want more clients. We want more clients selling, exporting internationally, and doing R&D and innovation, and providing high quality employment for our people. Next slide, and I'll finish up reasonably quickly, Chair. Thanks for your patience. This just gives you, this graphic gives you an indication of the nature of the clients that we currently have across the region, including your council district. So we're having engagements with these clients all the time, talking to senior management, helping them to overcome challenges in their business or in operating in the region, but always presenting them with reasons to reinvest in your operations in this region. I suspect many of you know the owners, founders, or senior managers in these companies. And each of these companies is a dedicated client manager and Invest in I. So if they have an issue, they can pick up the phone and say, I need to talk to you about this. If they need support, they can pick up the phone directly. They can call me as well. So there's a good cross-section here of manufacturing and services, everything from agri-food to advanced manufacturing to, say, for example, a company like Fintru, which is a relatively recent arrival in the region, doing some very sophisticated work in financial regulation. Thank you. We'll go to the next slide. And this is a summary of our performance. So earlier I spoke to you about our overall organizational performance for the first year of our strategy. Here we've carved out the specific contribution of the North and Northwest region to those overall aggregate organizational numbers. So in the first year of our strategy, we won 236 investments. The value of that investment was north of £160 million, and it created just over 300 jobs. Alison may correct me here now, but again, the preliminary results for the second year of our strategy, for the North and Northwest region is higher again. It's building on these first year numbers. And our job as an agency, as I said, is about keep the numbers growing in the right direction. Here's the specific performance then for Derry City and Strabane Council area. So 121 investment projects were supported in your council district. The value of that investment by those 121 projects was £126 million. 94% of the investments were by small and medium-sized enterprises. We had one new inward investor in the council area in the first year of our strategy. And all of our clients, all of those 121 investments delivered just under £120 million of investment in R&D and innovation. So this is a sign to us of the potential in the region for economic growth and for high quality investment. If we move on to the next slide then. So, you know, you've already absorbed this because you've had the deck in advance, but it's just to make the point, to win those investments by companies, there's a lot of shoe leather involved, a lot of driving around the region, organizing meetings with the companies, going in, talking to them about their strategy, where there are opportunities for reinvestment. A lot of stakeholder events, meetings in our office, meetings in hotels, reaching out to the universities and entrepreneurs saying, come and talk to us. If you have an idea for a business, a brand new business, or an opportunity to scale your business, come and talk to us. Some of those events are great in terms of how many people turn up and the quality of the engagement, but I'll be frank, sometimes we organize the events, very few people come, despite our best efforts. And that's something that we need to address. Next slide, almost there, Chair and members. Thank you for your patience. This will be very quick. This is just, you know, an example of some of the announcements in the first year of our strategy. So E&Y deciding to invest in the region. There was a significant investment by KES, one of the largest R&D investments, research and development and innovation investments in the history of Invest in I, was undertaken by a firm in this region. By Seagate, and I'm pleased to report that we'll have some new inward investment announcements over the next few months. Next slide then. Part of our job is to promote what we do, promote the solutions available to clients, but also to tell the wider business community and stakeholders, give them evidence and examples of all of the positive things that are happening, because sometimes the positives can be drowned out by criticism or focusing in on negative things or constraints. And there are constraints and there are legitimate reasons to criticize Invest in I and to want more investment, but there's an awful lot of good stuff undertaken behind the scenes. Finally then, just a brief comment on the Lines review. As you know, just before I joined Invest in I, there was a very critical public review of Invest in I called the Lines Review, and it effectively said the organization needs to change fundamentally right from the top. I've been heavily involved in that process over the last 2 years. We have a new chairman, new CEO, new chief development officer, brand new executive committee. So there's been fundamental change in the organization over the last 2 years. We've changed our committee structures. One of the things I noticed when I came into post was how mired in bureaucracy Invest in I was. Everything took forever to do. There was an excessive focus on process and on almost protecting the organization, presuming a worst case outcome from taking any decision and working back from that to create a process that guarded against a worst case outcome. And the problem with that psychology is that it slows everything down. So one of my colleagues used a phrase in my early days in Invest in I, he said, Kieran, we're wading through treacle every day. So we've spent the last 2 years stripping down our processes to make it easier for us to do our job internally and easier for our clients to engage with us and go through due process. Now, don't get me wrong, due process is necessary because we're custodians of public funds. We have a budget each year of £150 million, and we're not going to scatter that money around like confetti at a wedding. You know, we have to be very, very careful about how we deploy our capital to make sure that it has the intended impact that will deliver social and economic benefit for the people we serve, the people in this council district and across Northern Ireland. But it's about striking a balance between governance and oversight and process and risk management and getting the job done. And now people in Invest in I feel more enabled, free and encouraged to go out there and do their job. Lines in summary had 35 actions. To date, we've fully implemented 32. So there's 3 outstanding, 2 are due for completion by the end of 2027. And the last action is actually an action for the Department for the Economy. It's not an action for Invest in I. So from my perspective and the board and chair's perspective in Invest in I, the lines review shone a necessary magnifying glass on the organization. It was necessary. It held a mirror up to us and said, guys, you're not best practice anymore. You need to change. And I know this from personal experience because I came from Invest in I, from IDA Ireland, a peer agency in the Republic. So I spent over 20 years with IDA Ireland. And I can remember a time in my first 10 years in IDA Ireland where executives that were working overseas said to me, we went to meet this company and that company last week. And you know what? Invest in I had been there before us. And they didn't want to talk to us because they had been convinced that Northern Ireland was the place for them. This was particularly the case in areas like cybersecurity, technology, and advanced manufacturing. That was the case for about a decade. And then in the second decade, when I was in IDA, I never heard any of that again. Invest in I disappeared. So its impact and its presence in the marketplace evaporated. And we in IDA could never understand it. So they're only up the road and they're marketing a not dissimilar proposition to us, but we have the added advantage of the corporate tax angle. Why do we not observe them now in the marketplace competing as effectively they did previously? So we want to rediscover that Invest in I, and the transformation process triggered by lines is enabling us to get back to there, which is exactly where Invest in I should be. We have some fabulous people, incredibly hardworking, dedicated, passionate, and capable. And my job and Alison's job is to enable them to flourish in their role and deliver more investment from Northern Ireland. So look, I'll leave it there. Hopefully that gave you brought maybe some of the slides to life. Forgive me for going on probably longer than was necessary. I won't do that again. And but hopefully you found that useful. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Kevin. So 30 odd minutes here. I loved every minute of it, to be honest. So I'm going to open this up to the floor, but before I do that, I've just got a couple of comments and questions that I want to make myself, if that's okay. So what I want to welcome is the transformation process. First of all, about how open and honest you're being about the challenges that existed within the organisation. And Kevin, we've had your predecessors at this committee on numerous occasions over the last number of years. And we've had difficult conversations with them because, you know, the opinion locally, which is based on Invest in I performance locally, is poor. And if you would ask anybody in a street in Strabane or a street in Derry or a street in Castlederg about the impact of Invest in I in local communities in terms of producing good jobs, better jobs, I don't think local people would have a lot to say in favour of the organisation. We welcomed the Lions review. We fed into the Lions review. I'm glad to hear that the changes that were agreed are mostly implemented. So hopefully that leads to a leaner, meaner, more fit for purpose Invest in I. I also welcome the changes to the organisation locally. we do know the new regional head of business. We know her very well, a trusted colleague in this chamber for a number of years. We welcome the investment in the regional teams. We welcome the new regional office. We don't know where it's going to be yet. If you want to share that with us, that's up to you, but I'm not going to push you on that. So what we want to see is more invest in a activity across this council area. Okay. I think everybody agrees that, we as elected members, council officers, but most importantly, people out there, we need more jobs, we need better jobs lead to a higher standard of living, more disposable income, everything. But we cannot ignore the performance. And within your presentation, you give us a snapshot of the performance in the 24-25 year. And when you look at that, you just go, right, okay, there's numbers there, but I've had a look at that in comparison to the other 10 council areas. So in the 24-25 year, there were 110 jobs supported by Invest NI, new jobs supported by Invest NI across this council area. That is lower than Antrim and Newtonabbey. It's lower than Armagh, Banbridge and Craigavon. It's lower than Causeway Coast and Glens. It's lower than Lisburn and Castlereagh, lower than Mid-Ulster, lower than Newry, Mourne and Down, 1,000 lower than Belfast. So our council area, as the second city in the north at its heart, we get less than 4% of the new jobs in the north. We don't think that's acceptable. We think probably we should be getting a bigger slice of the pie. So my question to you, Kevin, and to you, Alison, what are you going to do differently? So if you come back next year, that we're not talking about 110 jobs, we're talking about hundreds of jobs that are being created on an annual basis across this council area. And you've said that Invest NI is a target-driven organisation. I know there are targets for number of investments outside the Belfast metropolitan area, number of new jobs, value of investments. Do you have targets for this council area? So, for example, in 24-25, 110 new jobs created. Is that above or below the target? Because we want to be ambitious about this. So if you could give us a flavour of where you see the future going in terms of new jobs and better jobs. Are the targets ambitious? So that's what I want to have a sort of an understanding of, where we go from here, and how we're going to get there, because out of the 11 councils, we're 8th in terms of new jobs, and we should be on top half at least. Okay, so over to you, Kevin and Alison, and then I'm going to bring everybody else in. Okay, thank you.
So thank you for your kind comments, Chair, and for your very relevant question. And Alison, you'll want to jump in here at some stage. So what we have done in relation to jobs, we've tried to remind the organisation that at a Northern Ireland level, we have technical full employment, right? So what our clients are saying to us, Invest in I, if you continue to define success in terms of just job creation, that won't work for us. Why? Because oftentimes now we can't find the people, first off. If we can't find the people, we can't find the people with the right skills. And to remain competitive in our markets, we need to get our costs down and our productivity up. So what a lot of our clients are saying to us is what we need to be doing and what we need from you is support to streamline and digitize our processes, invest in robotic process automation, and upskill our people. So they're doing more high value roles within the business. And that will create its own momentum and justify hiring more people, but not at the levels that you've traditionally been used to because of constraints within the labor market, but also the economics of the business. So while we have set job creation targets, so the job creation target for the entire strategy is 10,000 over the 3 years. We delivered over 3,000 in year one, and we're on track to repeat that in year two. So 6,500 to 7,000 jobs will have been created out of the 10,000 by the end of the 2-year strategy. We have set targets for jobs at our 5 operating regional level, but not at individual council level. Correct me if that is wrong. So what do I mean by all of this? We've shifted the emphasis from job creation because for a long, long time we were viewed as a job creation agency. That's all this agency is meant to do, create jobs. But that doesn't make sense in an environment where, as I said, you've technical full employment and the nature of work and the skills being demanded of people is changing. So we've shifted the emphasis to investment. Get our clients deploying capital in their business. Get our clients investing in R&D and innovation and digitization, and the jobs will follow, but they will be more high quality jobs. So we've set a target to make sure that at least 80% of the jobs that we create have a salary above the Northern Ireland private sector median. So rather than it being the volume of jobs created in the business, it's the quality. What skills will the employee gain from working in this client company? What will their average salary be? How will that grow over time? Because that's a form of wealth creation. It's that salary that allows people to go into the bank and get a mortgage for a house, to pay their way, to live, to buy services in their local community. So we're trying to change the way the organization views what it does to lead with investment. Now, in saying that, I'm not saying that job creation isn't important. It will always be important. The people coming out of the colleges and the universities, the people attached to their local community, we want to give them opportunities for employment, but we want that employment to be high quality employment. I fully accept that this council area, delivery by us in this council area, has not been where it needs to be compared to other council areas, but each council area is different. So when I go down to the OMA office and I meet councillors there, or I go to Ballymena, the industrial structure in each of the council areas is different, and the council area's ability to deliver clients that can give us eligible investments varies. So just looking at, say, what one council area got and then saying, well, we only got 5% and they got 10%. If you drill into the industrial structure, the number of existing clients that we have there, the types of conversations that we're having with businesses in that council area, and the skills and capabilities that they have, they're different to yours. Not necessarily better, just different. Yeah, please.
Thanks, Chair. I think to come in and echo some of what Kieran said, it's also important for us, and we recognise in those regional offices now, the opportunity really to help our smaller entrepreneurs, Indigenous businesses, and that's where we work in partnership with the likes of the Council to maximise opportunities from the local economic partnerships, the City and Growth Deal, so that we have our client base, but actually we're growing that client base through new entrepreneurs who are growing the new businesses of tomorrow that will employ create those future jobs.
Thank you, folks. And Kieran, I think I called you Kevin earlier, so I do really, really apologise. So I'm going to open it up the floor. First indicated speaker is Councillor Hutton. Aisling.
Thank you very much, Rory, and thanks very much to Kieran and Alison for coming along here today and giving us that very detailed presentation. As Rory had stated at the very beginning of the meeting, we all feel that these meetings are so important, and getting those regular updates is how we can work together and obviously have that trusting way of working going forward to ensure that we're doing the best for the economy of the Northwest. And it's just to mention, I suppose, I'm going to come at this as maybe marking this as a genuine fresh start for Invest NI, because as we have heard through the Lions review, the implementation of change is something that was needed and that has been done. Obviously, our communities are evolving, social and demographics are shifting in every direction, as we have seen through investment in our city and district, just through the city deal and the strategic growth funding. And then obviously to top that up, then we've had the 4.4 million funding from the economy minister. And that's a real strong commitment that there is investment in regional imbalance. And you also added in relation to the land and property programme, you know, that is evolving. That's showing that there's going to be a need down the line, and we've already started thinking about that. But I suppose the sub-regional focus is a positive step. And particular intent is the transparency and the clear target setting that you have set out for us today, which is good to see. And also, we also want to wish Aideen the very best of luck. Obviously, having that key leading role within our council area was a key ask of Sinn Féin. That has been done, and we wish Aideen all the best in her future endeavours. And I suppose the targets that we spoke about earlier, if they are achieved, they will obviously boost the already economic performance that's been happening. Because if you've seen through the UU report, it showed that Derry City and Strabane area is among the top performing regions over the past decade. So we will be talking about the local economic partnership and confirming that later in the meeting as well. So we'll be delighted to do that. And it's just to say that, you know, performance will be closely monitored, and that's not like a threat or anything to say, it's just because it is so important, and all eyes on the ball is what's going to make it successful. The sub-regional approach is the only way we feel to correct the economic imbalance, and we're leading on this with our Sinn Féin minister at the minute. So great progress after decades of ignoring the Northwest. I'm sorry to say that, but there's still more to do. So we will welcome every meeting. Sinn Féin will welcome every discussion and around this here in our council chamber, and get behind all the plans and future endeavours in order to make our economy the best that it can be. But thank you so much for coming in. And as I say, we will be keeping a good eye on this and ensuring that we're meeting our targets and everybody's doing what they should be doing to progress forward. So thank you.
Would you like to comment on that, or well, two more indicated speakers, and then if we want to go back to you?
No, just to acknowledge the very kind and constructive comments from the member. We intend to do our very best for the Northwest and for this council area, and this is a work in progress. So we're just 2 years into a 3-year strategy, but we've already started the process of what will the next strategy look like to build upon the foundations that we've put in place. And we are cautiously optimistic. We're having some really interesting discussions with potential international investors and existing clients in this region. That gives us hope for the future. Thank you.
Okay, next indicated speaker is Alderman Hussey. Derek.
Thank you for the opportunity, Chair, and thank you to Kieran and Alison for coming in. And as has already been said, I wholeheartedly welcome the intention post-Lions, but I think, as has also been indicated, we want to see the results. So obviously that is going to take time to develop, and I appreciate that. And I suppose what we are seeking is a sound mixture of inward and Indigenous investment going forward. So I know the efforts that are made, and Kevin and others are involved in that contact with the diaspora to try and catalyze that and utilize it within our area. One thing that I noticed on one of the slides there, where it talked about in the Northwest, 165 million producing 309 jobs, and the Northern Ireland total is 580 producing 2,921. If I'm not mistaken, that represents £200,000 per job for the Northern Ireland average, roughly, and in excess of £500,000 per job in the Northwest. Perhaps you can explain why that is. One of the things that I found very interesting today is the former General Secretary of NATO, Lord George Robertson, assessment that the UK's security is in peril. Now, that suggests to me that there's a potential growth within defence industry. And I know a lot of that is concentrated at present in the Belfast area. And are you looking at those areas of investment, and would they apply to the Northwest, that defence-related industries would be encouraged to come into our area, because they are a major growth area at present without the former NATO officials' assessment of the current situation. So it's very much a potential growth area over and above what it already is. And Northern Ireland has a strong foot in that camp, and it's something that we should be using to the full for the benefit of our citizens. You mentioned in there the electricity and water constraints that exist, and that is something that that has been a concern in our council with regard to general planning, much less industrial expansion. One of the areas that we had talked about was actually the utilisation, wind generation in the west of the province. That's where the majority of it is being used on site, rather than having to invest NIE systems investing to bring it to the east. Why can't it be used? And is there negotiation contact with NIE on the likes of that? And indeed, have you any promises from the department that the water constraint issue will be dealt with in the near future if we're going to expand our base going forward? Skills in the Northwest region, you mentioned that skills can sometimes be a constricting factor, lack of. But when you consider the Northwest region, do you consider the entirety of the Northwest region? And I'm specifically referring there to the Northwest region of the island. Namely, we have a very close working relationship with Donegal. There are skills in Donegal. There are Donegal people who come in and work in our area, have the skills that are available beyond Derry City and Strabane District Council area, been taken on board within your skills assessment going forward. And finally, you mentioned colleges and universities. One of the issues that I find talking to people is actually a lack of skilled tradespeople. And I know that probably that fits within the Department of the Economy. But is there any methodology whereby InvestNI can ensure that the skilled tradespeople are at hand? Because members in the chamber have heard me talk before, but what is a good job? A good job is a job that satisfies a need, as far as I'm concerned. And I used the example of, I think it was DFI recently advertising for industrial road workers. So, there is that level of employment that is available, as well as the university degree, etc., going forward. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Member, for your kind comments and questions. I'll take some of them. I suspect Alison will jump in as well. In no particular order, on defence, we agree with you. We think defence is a growth opportunity. We have an aerospace defence and security team that manage our relationships with existing clients in those areas. And given developments in the world and proposed increases in investment in defence and security, that is an opportunity for Northern Ireland and potentially for the Northwest. We have very few pure play defence companies in the portfolio or in Northern Ireland. The only one, to my mind, would be Thales. And by defence, I mean now making weaponry. So Thales, as you know, design and manufacture anti-aircraft and anti-tank missiles, and their operation in Belfast is highly regarded within that French group. The engineering expertise in that area is highly thought of. Where I think there might be more opportunity for Northern Ireland, including this council district, is less in pure play defence and more what we call dual use technologies. So there are companies that develop technologies for, how would I describe it, to do with drones, for example, or radar or sonar. So the software associated with defense and security products and services. We have lots of clients with capabilities in that area. So dual use, as you know, means their products and services can be sold in either civilian markets or adapted and applied in a defense and security context. So we are talking to companies in that context. UK government recently announced a defence growth deal, and Northern Ireland was identified as a node that will participate in that UK defence growth deal. And there's actually a briefing with, I think, the Parliamentary Undersecretary in Belfast next week that I'm attending, where there's going to be a discussion about how do we at a Northern Ireland level initially capture some of the opportunities in this space. So yes, is the short answer. On the infrastructure piece, this does concern us, because when you think about it, a lot of the core capabilities in our Invest in I client portfolio and across Northern Ireland are related to manufacturing and services, but there's deep expertise in manufacturing. You'd be amazed at the number of places in the world now that can't design and manufacture physical things anymore. It's almost a skill that they've lost, but not in Northern Ireland. People are able to build things. So manufacturing really matters to us, but manufacturing is, relatively speaking, infrastructure intensive. So they need land, they need a site to build a factory, they need power, and they need water. And there are areas where there are constraints. So in recognition of this, we reached out to the managing directors of Northern Ireland Water, Sarah Venning, know her very well, Derek Hines, who has just stepped down as managing director of Northern Ireland Networks. And we sat down with them and we said to us, you need to tell us where there's spare capacity in your networks, because we do not want to convince an international investor to come to Northern Ireland and then take them to a location where there either isn't enough infrastructure to meet the requirements of their proposed investment, or where the necessary capacity won't be delivered in a reasonable time frame. So we're proactively working with both agencies to ensure, and we're advocating for them. So when I meet the minister, Kiva Archibald, I always tell Kiva, investment in infrastructure is crucial, because the capacity for the Northern Ireland economy to continue to grow hinges upon making sure we've enough water, wastewater, land, and power. And if you recall, Northern Ireland Networks published a new investment plan for the grid across Northern Ireland only in the last 2 or 3 months, and we would have inputted into that. And we're also confidentially sharing with Northern Ireland Networks and with Northern Ireland Water, where we're thinking about buying land and creating next generation business parks, so they can say to us, we can get you a connection in a reasonable time frame. There's some spare water there or spare capacity on the grid. So hopefully, so we are, to your point, aware of that issue, the constraints, and thinking about how we can overcome them. Your other point was the apparent misalignment between the total value of the investment in this council area and the relatively small number of jobs associated with the quantum of investment. That can happen from one year to the next if you have particularly high capital intensive investments. So if the nature of the investments we're supporting involves a lot of plant and machinery and capital equipment, or R&D and innovation, or investment in those areas, they give you the investment number, but the associated number of jobs can be less, but the quality of the jobs can be very, very high. So there isn't a direct correlation between a large amount of investment and necessarily a large amount of jobs. This year, we haven't seen the numbers yet. It could be completely different. You could have the same broad level of investment, but have more or less jobs. You have to look into the precise nature, the specifics of the investment undertaken by the clients. And I suppose my earlier point is, I think we should prepare in Northern Ireland for a future where the jobs intensity of the investments that we win is less, because that's a trend internationally. So while companies are still investing, the number of jobs triggered by their investment is falling as they emphasize productivity, competitiveness, and investments in artificial intelligence and automation. The trick in that type of environment is to have enough clients investing all the time to maintain an adequate level of new job creation to compensate for those jobs that are destroyed or displaced by the adoption of new technologies, and making sure that the salaries that people are earning for working in those roles and those types of companies is increasing all the time, because their purchasing power will have an impact locally in a council district area. Your point about the Northwest and the relationship with Donegal is a very valid point as well. So what we try and do when we're talking to international investors, given the strong linkages between the Northwest in the Republic of Ireland and the Northwest in Northern Ireland, and the fact that people are working on both sides of the border, we refer in our propositions to international investors on assets on both sides of the border that investors could actually tap into, because that makes the proposition stronger for us. So what we're effectively saying is, we want you to invest in Derry, Londonderry, or Strabane, or Coleraine, but there are assets and capabilities that you can tap into nearby, albeit in another jurisdiction. So that's something that we are doing. We have a good relationship with Letterkenny Institute of Technology, although it might be called something else. ATU, the Atlantic Technological University. We see an opportunity in the financial regulatory space for the entire Northwest, and we've contributed to a conference. Colleagues in Donegal and colleagues in Derry, Londonderry, both thinking, how can we attract more regulatory technology type projects to the Northwest, building on FinTru's presence. So that's something we're doing. You're commenting on the skilled trades people. I mightn't have completely understood what you were driving at there, but maybe Alison, you did. Forgive me, member.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's for us to fully address. So we have a skills team within my division. We are working with companies, clients right across Northern Ireland, particularly in the Northwest as well, to understand what their skills deficits are, what their skills needs are, and what their future skills needs will be. That tends not to focus on trade areas. It's in the areas of technology, but also depending on different regions, there might be specific skills in areas like health and life sciences. So that's primarily where our focus is. And maybe just one other area, I suppose, to pick up, the infrastructure is absolutely critical, but you talked about maybe the opportunity for clients. Through shared island funding, we've been able to support some clients in Northern Ireland really to look at kind of using their waste to fuel their factories to sell power back to the grid. So we are working with clients on sustainability projects like that, and we would welcome more of those.
One of the other things we're doing in the context of our new strategy, if you look at recent events in the Gulf and how the incidents in the Strait of Hormuz has now acted as a choke point in global supply of fossil fuels, this will probably encourage people to revisit the importance of renewable energy, of solar power, etc. And there are some very, very interesting capabilities and assets in this region related to renewable energy. The presence of Kulkira up here is an asset that we're alert to. We're working with a company to establish a significant data center operation up here as well, and proximity to renewables is something that's significant in that context. So hopefully that addressed some of your questions.
Through you, Chair, thank you very much.
Thank you. So the next two indicated speakers are Councillor Mooney and Alderman Kerrigan. So I'm going to ask Sean and Keith to speak, and then if Invest NI could respond. And then we've got three further speakers, and I'm going to group them together because I think what they're going to say may be pretty similar. That'll be Councillor Harkin, Councillor McDade, and Councillor Donnelly. So, Sean.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to Kieran and Alison for coming down. I think a lot of the stuff that I want to have said has been said already. But I should probably acknowledge from the outset my colleague Sinead McLaughlin. You could probably rightly say she's been a thorn in the side of Invest NI for a long number of years, sitting in her capacity as MLA for Foyle and on the Economy Committee. But she's done a lot of work, I suppose, in relation in this area and about the performance of Invest NI in this area. I should acknowledge that, and I suppose. But that aside, I came today with I was reading this morning the Lions report and thinking, and looking through it and looking at the recommendations and things like that. And I was coming with a more coming to view, probably a bit more critical today. But as with all these presentations, once somebody speaks and you listen, you come out with maybe a different frame of thinking. From listening to what you were saying, Kieran, it was probably only fair to say that Lions reported in January 23, and we're only really 2 years post Lions at the moment, and you've only really had your first year of implementing a 3-year plan. And what your update has sort of revealed is that you're probably about 3,000 at the moment out of 10,000. So in a way, there's a certain sort of prematurity to be critical, because you have to see, obviously, give another 2 years to see how you've done. And obviously this committee, and I suppose our council, will in 2 years' time invite you back again and have a conversation to see how the performance is. But through the presentation, I've sort of picked up a couple of things, and really two things is what sort of intrigued me was your idea of the change in philosophy from job creation to job investment. And in a way, I was thinking, is that a way for you to get off the hook by saying from creation to investment? But I'm not going to go that way, because what my question is I suppose, how is that landing with your own personnel and in your own offices? That new idea of how to persuade clients and potential clients of, right, we are going to be job creating, but we want you to invest, and how that investment's working out. And how's that landing with organisations, that new sort of idea or that new philosophy? Because in a way it can intrigue me from, you've done this for so long, probably in your own IDA background, and you were saying about how Invest NI a long time ago were a lead, but they disappeared, and how that change of philosophy is landing, except they're only 2 years post Lions, and there may be still a bit of work to do. And also, Lions was very critical of the structures. Finding the previous organisation pre-Lions is very centralised, and obviously you accepted. And the fact being that that organisation was mired down in bureaucracy. Given the fact that now you're moving to a 5 model arena, and obviously at the Northwest is incorporating Causeway and Coast as well. Do you envisage the officers down here having more autonomy, being able to go out on their own and giving a bit more ability, free will in a way? I suppose hopefully that's the right terminology, but given more ability. Obviously they'll have to check in and ask for funding, but will they be allowed to get more autonomy to try and go about things differently than it was pre-Lions, so that's my questions. But thank you for coming down. I found the presentation very interesting. Thank you, Chair.
I'm going to bring in Alderman Kerrigan first, and then if we can address both sets of questions. So, Keith.
Thank you very much, Chair, for allowing me in. And again, I'm not a member of committee, so I do appreciate it. And I do thank Kieran and Alison for giving the presentation and for the information being in the pack. Apologies, I missed the very start of it, but I got the majority of the presentation. No, again, it is more positive. I know, to be fair, over the years, and I'm hopefully not speaking out of turn. Chair, you could have been quite critical in your day in regards to Invest NI, and I know others as well would have had issues, but there does seem to be movement. Looking at the Lions review as stated, you know, there's 32 or 35 short-term actions there have been implemented there, and I do wish Aideen well as she's taken up her new role. And of course, then, as say, it's been moved now into this 5 models now in regards to across the country here. So it is that have the issue as well. I suppose I was looking at the numbers, but you've answered that question in regards to Alderman Hussey there, because it was noting that it was sort of 2.5 times the investment within Derry St Instaban and Causeway Coast and Lanes to create the job numbers. You know, when you're chatting sort of approximately 530,000 to 200,000 as a Northern Ireland average, but you have touched on that because the potential of one-off expenditure and large initial investment there. Again, I do touch. I mean, it's very positive there. Various issues in it. You know, you have mentioned the energy and the production, and of course that's a major thing. The investment in infrastructure, and again, it's good to hear that you're having that constant discussions again with DFI in regards to Department of Economy. There is concerns, and I'm sure others will deal with it in regards to data centres and energy usage there. And I know even before I came into the meeting the other day, I'm at a public consultation in regards to energy and in regards to more wind turbines in my own and West Tyrone. Yeah, you know, and again, you have Invest NI has historically supported infrastructure, supported particularly engineering firms in the rural part in West Tyrone there. And I suppose it's that continued to support into that, because I'm looking very much from the very much rural area and trying to get that investment into that not all the investment has to be pushed into the cities and into the towns. Like, I know it's positive there. There's one various firms you've touched there based in Staban as well. But trying to get that onto, just querying there, the issues you would see in regards to the net zero. Are you seeing more potential opportunities in that regard there, because there is that push? And you did touch in relation to some of the firms there using the waste to try and create more energy as well. Do you see that as potential for positivity, or is it going to be more of a hindrance to getting business? And again, I'm content as well. You've stated there in your figures there, 65% of your investment is outside of Greater Belfast. So that's obviously positive as well, that you're trying to get that out. So no, just a couple of wee points in there, but no, overall, I was pleasantly pleased with the presentation and with a bit of positivity out of it. Thank you very much, Chair, for allowing me in.
Thank you, Keith. And you call me a critic of Invest NI. You know, I will praise what is good and criticise what is bad. So I'll make no apologies for that. So, folks.
I'd like to thank both members for their questions, which are very, very thoughtful. Alison will jump in as well. I'll take them in no particular order. The question about, reframing our approach to the job to emphasize first investment and then job creation, how that is going. Well, the way we're doing that is we have firstly, we have the strategy. That's kind of the Bible for the organization now, and that emphasizes investment. And the entire organization and individual teams have been briefed on that change. That change has been explained to them. And I address our staff briefing every month pretty regularly to keep hammering home that message. And the point I make to people is not to suggest to them that job creation isn't important, because it always will be. But to make the point to them, if you can convince a company to invest in its business, the jobs will follow. And so it's a different type of conversation we're having with our clients. Because if we go into clients and we sit down in front of them and we say to them, right, we want you to create jobs, and we may or may not give you a grant to help you to do that. The response of the businessman is, well, why would I do that? Jobs are a cost for me. This is a business talking now. Why would I hire 6 or 10 or 20 people just because you want us to do it? It has to make sense in the context of our business. Now, if you can give me a reason to invest, and then there's a follow-on reason to hire 5 people or 6 people or 10 people with certain skills to help me to implement an investment that will make my business more successful. That's the type of conversation I'm interested in having with you. So we're putting ourselves in the shoes of the business people. If we go in and say to them, if you invest in this type of technology, this will be the impact on the productivity, the competitiveness, and the success of your business. And we can introduce you to other people in this council area or other council areas that have done this, and they'll be able to tell you what it has done for their business. And they'll also be able to tell you how many people they hired with what skill sets associated with that investment. So it's that change in narrative. It's just a different approach and a different type of conversation with our clients and with investors. And then we have made changes to our solution set, the tools in our toolkit, to support that different type of conversation. So we now have a program of grants to support productivity development and investment in R&D and innovation. It is a subtle message because people, I think traditionally in all economic development agencies, not just Invest in I, depending on how long they've been in the agency, they can remember a time when there was double-digit unemployment. I can. A lot of people that I graduated from university from, they had to leave because there were no jobs. So there's a living memory of a time when people could not find work. And we recognize that. So we will always continue to try to create job creation, but the way we frame it with the investors and the clients needs to change. That was a very, very fair question. The other one in relation to the autonomy of the regional office. Yes, is the short answer, because now that we have heads of regional business that are more senior in terms of their grade and are sitting around the senior management table with me and with Alison, and because they're equipped with the strategy, I'm not a micromanager. So I trust my people. So when I give them the strategy and I tell them what we believe we need to deliver as an organization for the people of Northern Ireland, I say, here's the strategy, here's the plan, here's the targets, here's your toolkit, and here's your budget. Go execute. I'm not going to be looking over your shoulder in relation to how you do that in your local area, because you have the local relationships, you know the lie, the land, the geography. Go execute, but this is the broad plan. So our managers and our local teams are getting more autonomy. And when Aideen comes to Belfast and sits down at a senior management forum, she'll be coming back into the region saying, right, this is what we discussed. These are the tweaks or changes we need to make to our current approach. But equally, I'll be saying to Aideen, if something worked in your council district that would be good for Invest Northern Ireland to actually socialise and champion across the rest of our business and other council areas, that's what we're going to do as well. So it's a two-way communication. It's not top-down. So the centre says you will do this. That's not the type of operating model that we have. And to send a signal about the importance that we attach to local communities and their views and the views of our local teams. We had an executive committee meeting today in our office in Timberkey. So I drove up, Alison, everybody else, and we had a working lunch with our local team. And the presence of the CEO, all of the C-suite and the entire executive committee, and we're going around all of our regional office network to send a signal to people, we have your back. Tell us what's preventing you from achieving your targets or doing your job, and we will help. So in summary, yes to more autonomy. On the other questions, there was two that jumped out at me. Our commitment to rural areas. So as you know, Mid-Ulster has tremendous capabilities in the engineering space. So yes, we remain committed to supporting people to establish firms wherever they are. We don't expect people to leave their rural communities and come and establish business in a place that just suits us. And particularly in the first 12 months after I joined Invest, I spent a pile of time going the boreens and highways and byways of every council area, talking to local businesses. And what I learned about is the number of businesses that came out of a farmyard. You know, people that were working the land for generations, but knew how to handle machinery and equipment and had an idea and built a business out of that tradition of entrepreneurship, built it out of an agricultural background. They didn't set up the factory just because Invest in I had a site or land 25 miles away. They wanted this to be a local business, employing their cousins, their family, and members of their rural community. And their commitment to their community is still strong even today. So when we talk to them about reinvestments, they're not thinking about reinvestments elsewhere. They're thinking about reinvestments in the business that will continue to deliver social and economic benefits for their local community. And that mindset will shape how we interact in this council area as well. Net zero is very important. We have established what we call a new green economy team, because we see now businesses developing sustainable products and services. We have clients coming up with solutions to recycle plastic. We have a very, very significant client that has the potential to become one of the major suppliers of sustainable aviation fuel in the world. They've signed agreements with some major airlines. So there's a big opportunity in the net zero space, and we will actively look for net zero opportunities in this council area as well. So we do believe that that's an area of opportunity. Alison?
Thanks for the questions. And really just to echo what Kieran said, in terms of those regional offices, they'll have absolute autonomy. We want them to deliver and design their own regional strategic operating activity to understand the needs, the challenges, the opportunities of the local business base, and really bring those back and consider whether we need regional initiatives or whether we need to tweak and change the activities and solutions that we have in place to support our clients. And I think what's going to be really important is that we get the support of kind of local councillors, local stakeholders to let their constituents know that Invest NI is open for business. We want to hear what they need and want from us, so that we are tailoring our support so that they're fit for purpose. I think also on the net zero, as Kieran alluded to, huge opportunities there, and the green economy team are working to support companies to look at opportunities within that, to develop green technologies, to become more sustainable. And I think there was a reference to wind as well. I know from previous role, there has been some research done on the all-island offshore wind opportunity. So we're linking in our cluster team and our supply chain teams to ensure that companies in Northern Ireland can maximise the opportunities that come with offshore wind, so that they're ready to take those opportunities when things progress.
Okay, so the final three indicated speakers are Councillor Harkin, Councillor McDade, and Councillor Donnelly. So, Sean. Are you there, Sean?
Invest NI representatives for coming in today. Sorry I can't be there in person. Look, Stormont facilitated regional inequality over many, many decades, and also facilitated and created a low-wage economy in the north. And that's why 1 in 6 jobs across the north are below the real living wage. And unfortunately, our district has a higher proportion of low-paid jobs. And I would say Invest NI played a role in the facilitation of all this. There's been talk over the last year about Derry and the Northwest thriving, and I think that has been taken apart, that we are nowhere near thriving. So there are plans to transform it, but I'm not convinced that Stormont, the Department for Economy, or Invest NI will actually follow through on the type of things that we are being told here today, because there's decades of evidence to show that won't happen. So I think that there's a big question mark about that. But look, what I was most disturbed about was the discussion about the defence industry being an area of opportunity for Derry in the Northwest. And Mr. Donoghue, I don't know if you know where you are, but I think most people in Derry would be shocked at this talk. We have, over the last 3 years, witnessed absolute barbarism being carried out by the American government and Israelis in Gaza, where they've slaughtered children. They've now moved that on to Iran, Lebanon, and elsewhere. And the idea that we would be profiting from this, and this would be called an area of opportunity, is absolutely disgusting, to be quite honest. And it demonstrates to me that Invest NI continues to have absolutely no moral compass. and it'll not be accepted that this is what we do to bring jobs into dairy. The military industrial complex is creating the problems that we have in the world right now, and we should be looking to move away from any dependence on building and supporting the defence industry. I'm actually shocked at what you've said. I mean, you should probably go and Google Raytheon, a company that was brought in here, and people were told it would have nothing to do with killing people in Lebanon and elsewhere. And what did people discover? It was directly involved. And that company's not here anymore because a lot of people took a stand. They made sure it wouldn't be able to stay here. So I don't think we're going to go back to that. A city where people were gunned down by the British Army in broad daylight, and we're going to set up and profiteer and talk about the defence industry as an area of opportunity. I mean, really, you should actually resign if that's what you think, because that's never going to fly here. And our corporate position would not actually allow us to collaborate with an organisation like InvestNI that was doing this. We have a very clear stand about ethical procurement that we're working on. We have very clear positions on the British government's funding of its defence industry, that money should be spent elsewhere, like in play parks, schools, hospitals. So I think that this is, look, we've been given guarantee after guarantee from ministers, from the Stormont executive, that this is not what InvestNI is working on. The InvestNI was in Washington over St. Patrick's Day, and now we can kind of join the dots. This is what's being discussed, which is absolutely shocking. So I think that if this is the strategy of InvestNI, I have absolutely no confidence in the organisation in total, but also in its ability to bring jobs to dairy that are not reliant on murdering people around the world. And look at the devastation this man Trump is causing right now, in terms of like people out in huge numbers causing disruption across the island because of Trump and because of Israel. And you're saying we're going to profit from this, and this is an area of opportunity. Absolute madness and nonsense. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Sean. Councillor McDade, Catherine.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Kieran and Alison, for coming in. I am going to be brief, but it's of the same vein maybe as what Sean has just said. We welcome jobs for everyone, and like Alderman Hussey has said, all types of jobs for people with all different types of qualifications. But as an anti-war activist, I could never, ever condone any investment in the defence industry here locally. And if we were to invest in the defence industry here, that will inevitably contribute to the war machine that is complicit in a genocide and continues to build totally unneeded wars in the Middle East and right across the world. So I know it's being framed as an economic investment and opportunity, but I would like to ask the question at what cost, because locally people here, there's a very clear anti-war movement in the dairy area, definitely, right across our council area. And there absolutely is. And I firmly believe the people here would not want to be tied to the need for global instability for jobs. Alison, you talked about renewable energy and life and health sciences. That's where the focus needs to be. Saving lives, investing in lives, investing in people's lives being better, not in an industry that takes people's lives away. So I just wanted to put it in record that I unequivocally reject any idea that any notion that there'd be any development of a industry that like the defence industry here in our council area. Thank you.
And final indicated speaker is Councillor Donnelly. Gary.
Chair, and thanks for letting me in. I'm not a member of this committee, and I had no intentions of speaking. I have been listening intently, and up to this stage I was prepared to give the benefit of doubt following years and years of discrimination against this part of Ireland. But then the absolutely disgraceful comments that the potential answers to our lack of job situation is let's make bombs. And you did actually say something about what's going on in the world at the minute. Where have you been? Have you been under a rock? 178 school children murdered, slaughtered, a genocide going on in Gaza. And you've come to a city that has been affected by British imperialism, and you're telling us that we need to make bombs? Are you off your trolley or what? We did, as pointed out by a previous speaker, we had Raytheon here and they were kicked out of this city. And you see, if this is the attitude of Invest NI, then they should be kicked out of this city too. And as Councillor Harkin pointed out, we have a corporate position. People throughout the UK, groups like Palestine Action, are taking actions against factories that are building these weapons of destruction, and we've supported them. And then you're coming here and telling us that that's the answer. Without any talk of ethical investment, you're an absolute disgrace. Thank you.
Right. Yeah, of course, Kieran, of course. There have been some various serious allegations levelled at Kieran. That was not my recollection of what Kieran said, to be honest. I think there was like some mention of there were opportunities in terms of dual usage, but I will let Kieran explain that.
For the avoidance of doubt, right, I was responding to a question which asked me, do you think that there is an opportunity in the broad defence sector? And my response was yes, for the simple reason countries all over the world, and I don't welcome this, so I'm not looking at it through, I'm not making a moral judgment. What I'm saying is the world at the moment, governments everywhere, right across Europe, are nervous. Their people are scared because of the instability in the world and perceived threats, real or imagined. So governments all over the world, regrettably, from their perspective, some of them have said this to me privately, are having to divert more money into defence. That's a reality. The question I was asked is, does that mean that there's an opportunity for Northern Ireland? And I said, yes, for the simple reason Northern Ireland has some capabilities, not related to manufacturing guns or weapons or bombs or bullets, but Northern Ireland has a capability to develop some technologies that might have an application in the defence sector. I specifically then used the phrase dual use. The bulk of the technologies developed by our clients in Northern Ireland are for civilian use, not military use. But there was a global opportunity out there, and I have no doubt that at some point in the next 12 months or 2 years, a client will come to us and say, we have a potential opportunity to supply products that we've been supplying into civilian sectors for many, many years, to provide some of those technologies to the defence sector, broadly defined. That's a reality as well, and it's something that Invest and I will have to address over the next number of years, because companies are going to come to us and say, can we have a discussion with you about that? And as a public body, we will be guided by the wishes of our legislators, our minister, the department, and public policy. So all I'm saying is, in response to a question, is there an opportunity? There is. I did not say that I'm planning to bring Raytheon or Lockheed Martin or any company like that to the Northwest. I'm aware of the history of Raytheon. And I'm also aware of where the real capabilities in the Northwest reside. Defense, we don't even have a pure play defense sector within Invest and I, because there's only one company in a portfolio of 3,000 clients that has anything to do with pure play defense. The bulk of our activity is advanced manufacturing, engineering, life and health sciences, software, agri, food, and drink. So to connect my comments with suddenly there's going to be a flood of bomb makers coming into the Northwest or Derry, Londonderry, is just not true. It isn't going to happen because we don't plan to do that. We have no plan at all to do that because we see the capabilities and the skill sets in the Northwest as aligned with different sectors. But is there a global opportunity in this space? Regrettably, yes, because of tragic events in the world, beginning with Russia's invasion of Ukraine and everything that we have seen in the Middle East subsequently, which, as I said, is scaring people and prompting their governments to take steps to address that uncertainty, that nervousness, and that fear by taking steps to bulk up the defense forces. Morally, we might not like this. I suspect most governments would say, given a choice, we would rather that expenditure to go into health or to education or science and technology. But global events and circumstances at the moment are leading to an increase in defense expenditure. That's all I was saying. Not planning to bring Raytheon or any other company like that to the Northwest because we have other sectoral opportunities better aligned with this geography. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Kieran, for clarifying that. I did say we had 3 final indicated speakers. We now have another 2. So I'm asking the 2 final indicated speakers to keep this very brief. So it's Alderman Guy, Darren, followed by Councillor Hart, Brian.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm sorry I can't be there today. I didn't read over most of the actual presentation because I'm only back from my holidays and I sort of haven't read most of the file today. But thanks for Kieran and Alison coming on here. And I just want to touch on what was said in the past couple of comments. And I do sometimes wonder why people go on so much about the Northwest is missing out on job opportunities and so on. Yet when an opportunity arises, it's rejected on the basis of a few who believe that they get to call the shots what businesses set up in the city. Those who destroyed and forced out Raytheon from the city denied any further investment by any such companies. And they might not agree with basically what Raytheon and other companies do, but there is spin-off companies who make different stuff as well. And a lot of those spin-off companies from North America and stuff have blacklisted the Northwest, blacklisted our city. And basically, no matter what Invest NI do, they won't be able to bring them here anyway because they're not coming. But they'll still cry on that there's no investment brought into this city. Now, a few months ago, it was claimed that people looked up to these people who forced Raytheon out and all. I can say John Hume would have been turned on his grave at that comment at the time. Look, there's plenty more people on here would accept jobs coming from anywhere, well-paid jobs. But there is the minority who will keep doing things like this and acting out of character and basically trying to force them out again. So these companies will never come. And we'll just be here and people will get on to Invest NI, or you're not doing enough for the Northwest, but we'll moan about the jobs that might come here anyway. That's all I have to say, Chair. But it's a bit of a joke, all this. Like.
Thank you, Darren. I hope you enjoyed your holidays. So, Councillor Hart, Brian.
Thanks, Chair. And I wasn't going to speak because my colleague, Councillor Aisling Hutton, spoke very eloquently, and the presentation was very positive, and it went down a very positive road until Councillor Hussey introduced the idea of defence, which I think maybe would have been partly deliberately provocative. We saw in the jobs fair recently in Derry when the Ministry of Defence was going to come and all the uproar that caused. I think the term defence industry is a misnomer. The children, those 160 children that were killed in Iran, I don't think they would have saw that missile as defence. So that is what I want to say on that. I just think we've went down the road of negativity where the focus should have been on the positive aspects of what we heard here today. Thank you.
Okay, so that is definitely the final indicated speaker.
Chair, as I've been name checked, can I just make a final comment?
Very, very briefly, Derek.
Thank you, Chair. This district council area is more than Londonderry City or Derry City, whatever you want to call it. And certainly, if Invest NI are knocking about the Castledare, Newton Stewart area, I will assist them in any way to bring any employment to those areas.
Okay, so folks, on that final note, I want to personally thank you for coming, so for being so open and engaging. And Kieran, you laid all your cards on the table, and I really, really appreciate that. So sorry for calling you Kevin earlier. What I've taken from it is that the new figure is going to be available in June. Hopefully they're better. So hopefully, the trajectory is upwards. Hopefully the transformation agenda is working and we get to see more jobs, better jobs, a new regional office with more people working on it with a real Northwest focus. So I want to thank you for your time. And I hope you don't get stuck behind any tractors on the way home. So it was a pleasure.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, members, for the very constructive discussion and for your fair comments, observations, and questions. I and the organisation are committed to doing our very best for the Northwest and for your council area. And hopefully this gave you a sense of what we are doing and hope to continue to do to deliver social and economic benefit to your to the citizens. Thank you.
Okay, so committee, I'm going to propose, well, I'm going to insist on a 5-minute recess now. So we'll see you all back at 5:45. Folks, we're going to reconvene the meeting. Item 6 is Chair's business. There's just 2 items. One item is from myself, and that's just a welcome Jacqueline Horisky, who is a new addition to the committee. I see in agenda item 11, your title is Interim Head of Culture. So welcome to the committee. You're no stranger to anybody here. I hope you fit straight in and really enjoy the role. And the other piece of Chair's business is from Councillor Hart, and you wish to discuss the Strabane Drama Festival.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you and welcome to Jacqueline in her new role. Yes, the Strabane Drama Festival. So it's disappointing that the Strabane Drama Festival has not been successful in their bid to the Headline Events Fund, and I know this year there's been a new model in place of funding where we have the Headline Event Fund and also the consensual grant model where the local growth partnership distribute the funds. And the Strabane Drama Festival have kind of fell between stools as such. You know, they didn't really fit into the two. So and I have spoken at length with the organisers over the last week, and myself and my colleague Paul Boggs have met with them. And it's clear that not being successful in their funding bid will mean the festival cannot go ahead. I listen to their passion, their commitment and their determination to see that the Strabane Drama Festival continue, especially in its 40th year. I heard them speak how bitterly disappointed they were that potentially an event that attracts acts throughout Ireland may come to an end. Not being successful in their funding bid is compounded by the fact that the governing body of the festival may penalise the festival if it does not go ahead for the 2nd year in a row. Last year was due to the alley being closed and another suitable venue not being able to be found. I feel that the reopening of the alley, the missed 40th anniversary festival last year, and the bid for Strabane to become a town of culture mean that we need to do what we can to support the festival in 2027. It would also show commitment to the arts in Strabane and the need to grow the offering of the alley. I'm aware that the festival organisers are meeting with councillor officers this week, and I and my colleague, Councillor Paul Boggs, have also held discussion with council officers on this very matter. Therefore, under these exceptional circumstances that I've outlined, I have a short proposal which I hope the chair will accept, and it will, if it does, it will mandate officers to begin working on solutions to enable the 2027 festival to go ahead. The proposal is up there on the screen. So it just states council recognises the value the Strabane Drama Festival brings to the arts and culture offering in this council area and the impact the closure of the Alley Theatre has had on the ability for the festival organisers to draw down funding for their 40th anniversary last year. In recognition of this, council commits to support the 2027 Strabane Drama Festival by allocating funding that was lost to the festival due to the closure of the Alley Theatre in 2025. In line with our ambition to demonstrate Strabane's rich cultural heritage through a town of culture bid, council will develop a bespoke funding package for the arts and culture sector in Strabane town. Thank you, Chair, for hearing this today.
Thank you, Councillor Hart. Do you have a seconder? Councillor O'Farrell, do you wish to speak to this, Antine?
Neil, to much the glory. No, I'm happy enough to let it go the way it is. Thank you.
Okay, so we have no other indicated speakers in the chamber or online. Oh, we do. Councillor Alderman Kerrigan, Keith.
Apologies, Chair. Apologies. Technology sometimes there isn't my friend. Just as I say, apologies. Not a member of committee, Chair, so I have no vote. Just querying what is the financial, you know, how much money we're talking about here? Because I'm just not as aware. I don't sit as a member of Business and Culture, and I'm covering today, and it's the case of I'm not sure how much money was lost in 2025. for this? Just a point of clarification for myself. I mean, are we talking about 5,000? Are we talking about 50,000? There's no monetary figures there used, and just querying in regards to that.
What I'm going to do, Keith, is I'm going to bring on the director to give the council officer position on the proposal. So, Stephen.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So, I mean, in principle, we absolutely no problems. Strabane Drama Festival is clearly important to the town, and if we were to build on the Town of Culture bid, regardless of whether it was successful or not, we need to make sure all of our arts and culture organisations are protected and grow and thrive, etc. So that would be a given from council officers and council members, I would imagine. I mean, in terms of actual pure cash, Alderman Kerrigan, I think from memory, the previous before the alley theatre had to close, the award would have been about 2,500 to 3,000, with a maximum, I think, of 6, depending on whether other funding was found. If we were to reinstate that, we would have to do that by bringing the paper back to members for members' approval. So those figures would be spelt out in that paper before any actual commitment would be made in terms of budgetary, because although it was committed to the festival, when the alley theatre closed, it was reallocated, as we do with a lot of other funds. So reinstating it would require myself to have a conversation with the finance to make sure we have the budget for it. But it would be in and around that 3,000 to 6,000 would be the kind of figure. But we would confirm that by way of paper back to committee for members' approval. But I think the principle of trying to see how we can support the organisation, absolutely. The meeting that is scheduled this week to go ahead to get the feedback is very important, because as Councillor Hart says, the new process is to make sure all groups, and this goes for everybody, successful or unsuccessful, as we keep repeating, getting the feedback is really important, because that's how we get better applications going forward and make sure groups don't fall between two stools or they are not applying to the right fund, etc. So that feedback session is very important. And obviously the ambition going forward in terms of Town of Culture, absolutely. I mean, I think what officers have realised and developed in the short period of time that we had, with a very intense, as I would say, in terms of, because there was lots of emails flying about late at night with drafts of documents and so on. The level of ambition that we can do for this town in terms of arts and culture is much greater than what we would have ever imagined. And regardless of whether we're successful or unsuccessful, I think we need to capture that ambition and we need to grow it and we need to really capitalise on it, because as we said at the outset last month when we sought permission to do it, the capital investment that's going into the region is huge, but we need to invest in our people too. And this is an opportunity to do that. So we would absolutely welcome the second half, and that will be part of the paper as well when we bring it back. So happy to take that on board, Chair.
Alderman Hussey.
Thank you, Chair. And like Keith, I was wondering what the financial element was. Totally support the concept and the principle behind the proposal. And one of the things that I'm aware of is, as Councillor Hart pointed out there, that this particular application fell between two stools. And I'm aware of a similar situation in my own electoral area where an application fell between the big funding, the headline and the local consensual. So within the paper, is that something that would be intended to be addressed as well? Because there are, and we all know it in our own DEAs, there are those elements which will not fit into either and fall into that gap. Also, we're fully aware that the quality of applications is constantly improving. So we need, as a body, to look at that and how we deal with that going forward. Either we have to be prepared to allocate greater funds to these various application processes, or we have got to be prepared to say, well, sorry, the criteria has to be improved. So, people who reach the threshold are more limited. But my personal opinion is that we should be looking to expand and bring more in, because the applications are sound applications, but they've been failed by the lack of resource that we currently allocate.
Thank you, Derek. So my understanding is that the Strabane Drama Festival organisers are going to have a feedback session with council officers on Thursday. There's going to be a paper brought to a committee in the near future, but the event isn't scheduled to happen until March. So there is a bit of time to attempt to resolve this. So is everybody content? Is there any dissent whatsoever? None. Right. Okay. So that concludes chairperson's business. Item 7 is matters arising from our March committee. So has anybody any item they wish to raise? Alderman Hussey.
Thanks for the opportunity, Chair. BC 4726, the murals project. We were told that they were now entering into a procurement process. How far along the procurement process are we? And the reason for asking that is how close are we to engaging with the relevant stakeholder groups and how will they be identified? Thank you.
So, Jacqueline, that is your first question in your new role.
And one I
Welcome,
thank you very
Jacqueline.
much, Councillor Hussey. I'm sorry, one I just can't answer. It did go back out and they did have submissions, but I just can't tell you where it's at, but I will find out and come back. That's all right.
Any other items? No. Okay, so item 8 is the local economic partnership update, and we have head of business, Kevin.
Thanks, Chair. Members, the purpose of this report is to seek your endorsement for the acceptance of the letter of offer issued by the Department for Economy to Council to deliver a scheme of funded projects under the Regional Balance Fund. Members will be well aware, and it was obviously alluded to in the earlier presentation, that a local economic partnership was set up within Derry City and Strabane district over a year ago now at this stage. That group is obviously made up of the key local economic stakeholders outlined in item 2.2. The purpose of the group is to is in a number of areas, but primarily it's around the delivery of the Regional Balance Fund. Our total allocation is 5.15 million, which is the largest award in Northern Ireland, and it's basically targeted at addressing some of the issues that the Chief Executive of InvestNI set out around productivity, raising median salaries, and tackling economic inactivity. So the partnership board and the officer team have been working over this last period. We presented a draft action plan to this committee a number of months back and then submitted that to Department for Economy for approval. So we've worked with the department over this last period to fine-tune that action plan, and the department now are satisfied that they're able to issue 4.4 million of that 5.15, with the balance coming over the next number of weeks once some of the issues are ironed out in relation to that. The details are highlighted within section 3.1 in terms of the capital revenue split. The three key area themes are around supporting the growth and supporting our local SMEs, strategic placemaking, and clustering and collaborative networks. And all of the stuff we heard from InvestNI in terms of their corporate plan, their 3-year strategy, certainly complement. We certainly complement at a local level what InvestNI is trying to do at a regional level. And I would say that that relationship has been really important and very collaborative as we've developed up the action plan and identified the 12 programs that are listed in 3.4, so as that we can, really add value to the existing activities that are already happening within this council area. So it's obviously really welcome now that we're in the position now to get the letter of offer, because we've all been itching to get delivering ever since the Minister made the announcement back in October 24. So you'll see that the recommendation is that members are asked to endorse the work being undertaken by the LEP and to grant authority to accept the letter of offer from the department for 4.4 million.
Thank you, Kevin. So the first indicated speaker is Councillor O'Farrell. Antine.
Thanks very much, Chair. And thank you very much as well, Kevin. We've listened to Invest NIM, and I don't want to go over the old ground again, but we're happy to endorse this. We talked about the regional imbalance and all the rest. Hopefully this will effectively change all that as well. So,
Okay, so you're proposing this, Antain. We need a seconder. Councillor Mooney, do you wish to speak? No?
And just to say thank you to Kevin for the paper, and quite happy to endorse it. Thank you, Chair.
And Alderman Hussey.
Similar to Councillor Mooney, thanks for the paper. Just a quick query. Is a list of the partnership board members available?
Yeah, they're included in the report.
The bodies are, but not the people.
Oh, they can be shared probably. Need to check that out under GDPR.
If that were possible,
Yeah.
Chair, I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, so item 9 is the Strabane bid, and again, we've got Kevin to take us through that item.
Thanks, Chair. The purpose of this report is to recommend members approve Council's consent to holding a renewal ballot with the purpose of securing a third 5-year term for the Strabane bid, Love Strabane. It's hard to believe, actually, that we're going for our third ballot. This is my third. And when we had our first ballot, maybe we didn't necessarily realise, actually, the impact that the bid would have within the business community in Strabane. So you can see within the report the details around the process of calling for the ballot and the dates that are outlined. And this is really a regulatory piece, really. But what I would say is that since that period of time, the Strabane bid has really become an integral organisation lobbying for the businesses of Strabane, and actually from a council perspective, an organisation within which we are able to work with to understand the needs of the businesses within Strabane. And when we think about what's about to happen in Strabane around city deal investment, council's investment in the canal basin, and that type of thing, I think that the bid is going to be really important in trying to navigate the challenges that are going to exist for businesses with the various investments at the initial phase. It'll be an interesting couple of months as we try to deliver another yes vote. But the recommendation is that members approve council to hold a renewal ballot on behalf of the Strabane bid and agree that the body to be used as Civica.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. So the only indicated speaker currently is Councillor Hart. Ryan.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Kim, for the report. I'm happy to propose if it's needed. I think Strabane bid is doing a fantastic job to promote the businesses in Strabane, and to have a dedicated council resource leading that is great. And as you've stated, going forward with all the developments that are happening over the next number of years, I think it's essential that we have a strong voice from the business community, led by Strabane bid, to bring that forward. And so I think it's a very positive, and hopefully more businesses will come on board and participate in it, because the more businesses, the more voices from the business community, and more ideas and fresh ideas can only be beneficial for the town of Strabane. So thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Need a second or? So, Derek, I know you can't second, but you can speak if you wish.
Thank
and
you,
then
Chair.
it's Councillor O'Farrell.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Just very briefly, as Kevin says, it's the third life of the Strabane bid. I remember it being set up at the very beginning, and it has proved its worth, as Councillor Hart has outlined there. Given that the success of Strabane bid, is there any indication of an advantage to council in investigating the potential of similar organisations in places like Newton Stewart, Castledurg, etc.?
Yeah, I suppose every town or city, for example, has different needs, and I think that one of the, the model that's implemented in Strabane is one where you're levying a 1.5% onto the business ratepayer. So, you know, you want to understand what is the ability to raise a sufficient amount of revenue to make that impactful. And then B, what would be the will of the local community to basically voluntarily pay that levy. So you have to take that all into account. So I think that, you know, there's existing, I suppose, structures and mechanisms that operate across the district which kind of service the business needs. I think on the Strabane case, you know, there really wasn't at that point in time a really active Chamber of Commerce, for example, and enough of an infrastructure there to really represent the views of the business, and they were diverse. And in Strabane, you have this mix between large retailers, SMEs, sole traders, and that type of thing, quite diverse. So I think that you have to take that all into account, Alderman Hussey, before you would consider that, and you know, and whether or not there will be a will to pay some additional money, and whether that money would be enough to invest in the additional resource.
Through you, Chair. Thanks, Kevin.
Councillor O'Farrell. Noted. So item 10, the employability and skills plan 26-27, and again, that's Kevin.
Thanks, Chair. Members, it's probably been a while since we brought a skills paper to your attention, but the purpose of this report is to update you on the progress and priorities of the employability and skills function within Council and to seek your endorsement on a number of key programmes and initiatives planned for 2026. You'll see within the report the role that the skills function, small function or small team, that what they deliver within the skills area, and obviously, again, quite apt in terms of what we heard from Invest NA around skills shortages and around their kind of new business model. Specifically, I would say around digitization and automation and that type of thing. Quite a joined up sort of role is really more important than ever around skills if this region is going to benefit from new technologies adoption and actually the risks that are associated. So within the report, you can see a number of interventions. I suppose the key one is around the schools, the work with the schools across the district, not just the Foyle learning community, but also the Mourne-Derg too. And the work that's been going on there. So the team have basically been working with representatives from the schools across the district, doing survey work, trying to understand what the needs are from a post-primary perspective. And you can see some of that information and really focusing around career development and career pathways and that type of thing, raising the awareness of apprenticeships and alternative career pathways. And so out of that work and out of that survey work, the schools are really keen that we look at the promotion of careers solely focused on schools. So the proposal is to develop a Northwest Future Pathways event, one in the city in the Foyle Arena and the other in the Melvin in Strabane. The events will primarily target Key Stage 4 pupils, so that's years 11 and 12. So obviously that's GCSE aged students, really trying to help them understand their own pathways. And we as a council did this, the last time we did this was back in, I'm going to say 2021 or 2022, it was just after COVID, but we used to do it on an annual basis up to about 2018. That's the first area. There's some information there around the Education and Skills Delivery Partnership and the work that's going on there. But what I would focus your minds on is the ongoing work to re-engage in the ICT digital skills subgroup and also the tourism and hospitality subgroups. And we're aligning that to the action plan within the local economic partnership. It's going to bring some funding to that to really help re-energize those groups to try to understand the issues that exist within those sectors. Again, very similar to what Invest NA were saying around the growth potential areas. And then finally, you'll see information there around the Pathways Out of Poverty Action Plan in terms of skills and employability. That work focuses on strengthening the local skills pipeline aligning training provision with labour market demand, and there's a connection there with the labour market partnership, which we also are responsible for. And then how do you link that then up to the construction opportunities that we've been working on as part of City Deal, community wealth building, and our social value sort of needs. So the recommendation is that members note the contents of the report and endorse the actions outlined within the Employability and Skills Action Plan for 26-27.
Thank you, Kevin. So first indicated speaker is Councillor Heaney. Connor.
Thanks, Chair. And I just want to thank Kevin for the presentation. This is obviously extremely important work. I particularly welcome the work with schools and employers. And as someone who works in the sector, I know the good work the council is doing. So on that basis, I'm happy to propose that we endorse the plan and accept the recommendations.
Thank you, Connor. Next indicated speaker is Councillor McDade. Catherine.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Kevin, for the report. I'm happy to second it. It's brilliant. And what I would say is I wish there was something like that when I was at school, because it took me a while to find what career I wanted. And if you had had that kind of one-stop shop, it would have given you more opportunities than what happened to me, which was a nun sat me down and says, looked at my levels, law. And that was it. I never was going to do law. So that's really good. I'm really interested. Thank you.
But if that had happened, you may not be here with us, and we would be all terribly sad. So item 11 is the headline events update. So Jacqueline.
Thanks, Chair. The purpose of this report is to seek approval for the allocation of funding to Arts Over Borders Freedom Days event, subject to in-year savings being available. So members will recall that approval was given in February's committee for allocation of funding to the cultural grant aids programmes. With regard to the headline events process, the funding resource available allocations were awarded to 8 of the highest scores out of a total of 16 applicants. The Arts Over Borders Field Days applicant was the 9th application and currently is not in receipt of funding, as it just sits outside the available resources. So Field Days, if you don't know, it's entitled to Homecoming 25 to 2029, a 3-year event, but it celebrates, obviously, in the title, Brian Friel. And it aims to produce 29 Brian Friel plays across Derry, Tyrone and Donegal. And the programme is aiming to be the most ambitious performative project to focus on a single Irish playwright and artist. So the Yan Fed Festival, which is specific to our region, comprises of 4 separate cultural programmes, performative pieces, which in turn connect to 4 local historical assets. And it aims to happen in July and August this year. But it's also worth noting that Friel Days is part of a wider shared island application named after Brian Friel's Ballybeg Northwest Crossings. And this focus is really to create a new cross-border summer school for younger people in the Derry, Donegal and Tyrone area. And part of the annual Arts Over Borders Friel Days Festival, it aims to harness the presence of high calibre professional artists working on Friel Days productions across the 3 counties to offer intensive Friel-centred performance and industry training to up to 20 young people aged between 18 and 25. And the project leaders in this case are Donegal County Council, and project partners are ourselves and Green Theatre in Donegal and the Playhouse in Derry, and there will also be support from the Northwest Theatre Makers Forum. And the programme plans to include 2 intensive 3-week summer schools in 2026-27 and a community festival then in 2028. So that's the wider programme. So Arts Over Borders has been selected by Donegal, as I said, to be its applicant for Creative Ireland Shared Island funding. And this fund is, as you know, a cross-border opportunity. And it has the opportunity to get up to €250,000 for that 3-year period. So the organisers of the programme, Arts Over Borders, has recently indicated to us that their overall application could now be in jeopardy due to a failure to secure funding from us as part of the headline events process. So members will recall that you had indicated if savings were to be found, the next highest scores would be the recipients of that funding. So the finance section has indicated that potentially there is some savings from the Business and Cultural Directorate of up to £20,000. However, the full position on this will not be known until May. And Arts Over Borders have indicated to us that they, however, will need a decision earlier than that if possible, if they can proceed, because due to the time constraints in terms of organising what they have to do. So the Arts Over Borders, I should say, would have been eligible for up to £22,000, £906,000, and if additional funding had been made available. So indications from in-year savings is that there's up to 20,000 potentially available. So members are asked to approve the allocation of in-year savings of up to £20,000 to Arts Over Borders project. It is recommended that this is on the condition that shared island funding application would be successful. So that's the paper.
Okay, thank you, Jacqueline. So, of two indicated speakers, the first is Councillor McDade. Catherine?
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Jacqueline. I'm happy to propose the paper. I mean, Brownfield is an incredible writer, and we should be doing, like, it's a brilliant project to get involved in, and all the kind of cross-border work and the summer schemes for children. £20,000, if there's any year savings there, why would we not invest in this? So happy to propose. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Catherine. And next we have Councillor Anilis. Grace?
Megan Rory and Fulcherot, Jacqueline, there in your new role. Well done on the paper. Very happy to second this, and I wish the application well. I hope it succeeds, and I hope we get to see the productions coming forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Grace. And final indicated speaker is Alderman Hussey. Derek?
Thanks for the opportunity, Chair, and not a member of the committee. Welcome the report that's here. Brian, of course, was Oma born. As many people might know, his late father was actually a member of one of our legacy councils going forward. And I've had the pleasure of some of the previous field events in Donegal. And personally, I can add my support to the proposal that's before us. I think it's appropriate and proper. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Derek. So we're going to now move, if I get the nod, we're going to move on. Well, yes, you need to propose it first. Yes, that's proposed and seconded and thirded. So once I get the nod, we're going to move on to confidential